Howdy, everyone. Welcome to Go Pfeffy Break on Unsafe Space. Today is Friday, September 10th, 2021. I'm Carter Laren. You are watching Go Pfeffy Break, as I said, which is a live show we do every Monday and Friday at 11 a.m. here on Unsafe Space, 11 a.m. Pacific. And I am, more often than not, joined by, sometimes she's without me, Carrie Smith, who is right here. Hey, Carrie.
Hi, Carter. Hello.
Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Let's do some housekeeping before we introduce our guest.
Yes. Book club. Let's get peppy. No, I'm kidding. Today's just bear with us, audience. I know a lot of you are feeling a little, just people I've talked to, a little down. And you're not alone. I'm the down one. Carter's the peppy one today. And anyway.
What do you mean today? I'm always the peppy one. What are you talking about?
Book club's coming up.
They're going to start calling me Pollyanna Carter.
Book club's coming up. It is always free to join and participate. We usually alternate between fiction and nonfiction. This month we're doing fiction. We're doing Neuromancer. I think this is one of your choices.
It's actually Comics Division's choice.
Okay, cool.
I know nothing about the genre, but from what I can gather, because I've started to read the book, it seems like it's the seminal work in the genre of cyberpunk, which I didn't even really know was a genre. But I'm seeing lots of things that I'm like, oh, this is clearly referenced in Ready Player One, which I've read, and oh, this is clearly referenced in Cyberpunk 2077, which is a game I'm sucking at. But whatever. So like, it's clearly had an impact in the culture, and so I'm enjoying it so far. If you haven't started reading it, you have until September 19th to finish it. So,
and you can go to unsafespace.com/book club to find out more info.
Yes, and the next book after that, if you want to get a start, is Texit by Daniel Miller, which is obviously nonfiction. Well, actually, Texit sounds like it's fiction, but we're going to make it nonfiction in the future. And let's see, what else do we have? We have our Twitter is, there's a ghost of our Twitter account at _unsafespace.com, or Unsafe Space, I mean. So you can go check that out. And as always, if you want to support us, please go to unsafespace.com/support. Or just the main page. Actually, now since we are sometimes banned on YouTube and broadcasting from various channels and in various places, we are always at unsafespace.com. We embed the live show there, chats there. So if you're at unsafespace.com right now, your experience is the same as if you're sitting on YouTube. And obviously you can go to Odyssey. And I think that's the last thing. I think we can introduce our guest. Oh, don't forget to vaccinate the subscribe button.
Forcibly.
Give it its forcible vaccination because it needs to be vaccinated. Okay, with that, this is just some bitch I know. You could also call her L.
The swear jar is going to be full today.
That's okay. I'm allowed to swear today. I would like to introduce some bitch I know. She is. You can also call her L if you don't want to contribute to the swear jar. She's an independent researcher who's been keeping close tabs on the government's COVID response. She also was heavily involved in the election stuff back in the election debacle back in the late 2019, early 2020. You can follow her on Gab at SomeBitchIKnow, or on Twitter, which I think is her like 7th incarnation on Twitter. They keep banning her, where she's gee whiz, here we go. Or online, you can go to somebitchtoldme.com. Anyway, Elle, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me. Sorry, my cat is just chosen this exact time to walk across my desk, so you might see a cat here in a second. But thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to be on. So,
I was saying before the show, I'm happy to meet you because I don't know very much about you yet. Only because every time I follow you, you get banned. So I'm like, and they're like, hey, it's that girl again. She's back. But people can find you. You said before the show, if they want to find you in a more permanent place, you're on.
I'm on Gab, and I also have a Telegram, which is also Telegram at SomeBitchIKnow. I have a channel, and both of those are of course a lot more permanent than that. And then I also have my website, which is somebitchtoldme.com. And for anybody who's offended by swears, I'm sorry. It's just, it is what
it's okay. We have a mixed audience, and there's one audience member in particular who puts money in the jar every time. So Marie. Today is an expensive day.
Yeah.
Well,
it's good though.
Sorry, Marie.
Because it's always Marie. It's always me that is causing Marie to put money in the jar. I'm always the swearer. So, Now I have a partner in crime.
There we go.
So it's good. Pirate Tomsky gave us 10 pounds, and he's saying he's pre-filling the swear jar for us. So, all right. Elle. Let's talk about. Hey, what happened in the news today? What happened yesterday? What was in the news? Did anything happen in the news yesterday? Was there anything important?
I don't know. What? It's kind of a slow news day, wasn't it?
I think so. I did see Jen Psaki smiling a little bit, so there was some smirking happening. Maybe that made the news.
Smirk,
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Do y'all want me to like summarize it? Because if anybody,
I think you should summarize it because you have your finger on the pulse of this more, and then we can get into it. So.
Oh well, you're giving me way too much credit. Essentially, Joe Biden. Everyone knew it was coming. It had been hinted at for weeks up until this point. But Joe Biden yesterday gave a speech where he gave a 6-prong plan. I use the word plan kind of loosely there, but technically it's a plan how to slow the spread of COVID. And it basically is a declaration of war against small business, medium business, against just individual liberty in general. Granted, I don't want to tell you what to think, but that's what I think. And I feel like a lot of people agree with this. And even people who have been vaccinated at this point feel like, they might be pro-vax, but they're anti-mandate. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. And they're trying to circumvent the lack of ability for the federal government to authorize vaccines and mandate them for the citizenry, and now dumping the onus onto corporations and to big businesses, and it's a big mess. But of course, immediately after that, you have a coalition of states, kind of like we had in November. So hopefully this will turn out better. But you have a coalition of states, of governors, of attorneys general who have said, we're going to fight this tooth and nail, see you in court, which is what Kristi Noem said from South Dakota. So we will see. But Joe Biden certainly, he said that he claimed to have all these plans when he ran, but this doesn't really seem like a plan so much as a just squashing of the middle class. So
yeah. Well, Beverly, I think Beverly might have the website it's in Notion, Beverly. If you want to pull it up, you can. But so my understanding of the plan, I don't know if I want to whatever. That one of the prongs is, and one of I think the most controversial one, although I guess a bunch of them are. So one of the prongs here is requiring all employers with 100 or more employees to ensure their workers are vaccinated or tested weekly. 100 is not very big. That's that's a pretty small threshold. So that's one of the prongs. Another one is requiring vaccination for all federal workers and millions of contractors that do business with the federal government. I mean, I think we're talking like, by the way, when you start adding these up, this is most of the population is going to fall under this, having to deal with this directly, right?
Oh, that's her site. Yeah, there we go.
That's the other. That's her site. That's not the one I was talking about. But okay, Beverly, that's good. We can talk about that in a minute.
Well, if you scroll down just a smidge, the plan is down kind of a little bit down. You'll see the path out of the pandemic. Keep scrolling. You'll see the 6-prong plan. This is the article I've been putting together is a little messy. There you go. A little bit up. Sorry. Up.
Yeah.
You'll see a little bit up. It's got the blue line. There we go.
There it is.
Path out of the pandemic. And if you click that, it should bring up the site archive. Oh well, never mind.
Yeah, it's also in Notion, but that's what I'm reading from is that link that you're talking about, right?
Right.
So there's that one.
It's with OSHA. It's for workplace safety regulations. Which there's something interesting. If you scroll down just a smidge, actually just right underneath that on my site, you see that Ronald Klain, who is a White House chief of staff, retweeted this tweet from Stephanie Ruhle, who's a media personality, who said that OSHA doing this vax mandate as an emergency workplace safety rule is the ultimate workaround for the federal government to require vaccinations. So you have chief of staff from the White House retweeting this, boasting about the fact that they found their federal workaround. It's quite shady. Yeah. So that's good to keep in mind too.
Yeah. It's weird to me. It's weird to me how we've got I don't know. I guess for my entire life I'm watching the government slide into this increasingly totalitarian, especially since 9/11, which we can talk about because 9/11 anniversary 20 years is tomorrow. But we've seen increasing authoritarianism And we seem to give the government these powers, and then we're surprised when the next administration comes in and uses them in a way that like we didn't think. And it's like, yeah, well, they're going to.
Who could have seen this coming? Yeah.
So we've got businesses with more than 100 employees, all federal workers and contractors, all healthcare workers at Medicare and Medicaid participating hospitals, which I think, and other healthcare settings, which is basically almost all of them.
Including at-home care, which is I think a massive overreach. I mean, the whole thing is massive overreach, but at-home care, I mean, you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be losing their personal care person. So.
Yep. And then calling on large entertainment venues to require proof of vaccination or testing for entry. There's one more, which is requiring employers to provide paid time off to get vaccinated. That's actually the least offensive of all of them, although I don't like it.
They were doing that already, though. I feel like that was a weird one to throw in because that was already a thing. But, you know.
Yeah.
I guess they wanted to round it up to a nice even 6.
So let's talk about who's some of the pushback, because you mentioned one of the governors. What's some of the pushback that you've seen on this from the state level?
Well, I mean, as of right now, a lot of it seems to be a lot of posturing and a lot of, well, you know, we'll see you in court. So hopefully more than just posturing, hopefully will come out of it. I think that honestly, at the end of the day, while in the article that I put together, I am tracking what elected officials are saying. I think the most important part is to make sure that we ourselves are becoming more resilient and less reliant and more independent, because they need us more than we need them. And it's essentially, like I said, a declaration of war on a third to a half of the population who just flat out aren't going to get it. They keep saying that people don't know what they're talking about, that people don't know where to get the vaccines, which like they have them at Kroger. You know, it's not that people don't know where to get them. It's not that people don't know what they're about. It's that we know what they're about and we're not going to do it.
It's also a large part of the unvaccinated are Black people, and they also don't know how to get an ID or how to vote.
Yeah.
So, I forgot.
You know.
Yeah, according to the left.
The poor unwashed masses don't know how to get IDs and don't know how to get vaccines and are too stupid to understand white papers. But you know,
it's this.
I think that's an intentional,
continually demeaning and condescending kind of language that they use around this. Yeah. Although I kind of feel like he's giving up some of that condescension in terms of being too stupid to get it. In this speech, the way he kept saying he's frustrated, we're all frustrated at the unvaxxed. Sort of putting this hostility out there, and it sort of seemed like, wow, you're moving away from they're just too stupid to they're bad people. And I saw people making comparisons after that online to, you know, like the Rwandan genocide, the way that the media, was it the Danish? I can't remember. I think it was the Danish who colonized Rwanda, but the way that they stirred up hatred between the Hutu and Tutsi. And on the radio as well. And so people were saying it's sort of like an address where you're saying, hey, listen, Hutu, the 25% of Tutsi were really frustrated with them. We're really frustrated. They're the reason we're in this mess. They're the reason for all of our problems. They're stupid. They're this, etc.
Yeah.
And that's genocidal. I don't think it's hyperbole at all to say this is a precursor to something very bad. This is bad. This is not good language, right?
Well,
I'm just happy we don't have a divider in chief. Now we have someone who will unite us. That's what. Really
we're gonna bring the country together. We're gonna sew back the fabric of society, make a love quilt. No, I think that for sure it is some very divisive language. I think that what they have not really accounted for is the fact that there are plenty of people who have chosen to get vaccinated for whatever reason, whether they feel like it's the right choice, whether they're a lot more high risk and feel like that's like the best choice for them. They still are also not pro mandate. And you have people who see the warning signs of them talking about putting out boosters as soon as, I guess, the end of September, that see the slippery slope of tyranny. And I don't think that they quite accounted for the fact that even people who have gotten vaccinated aren't quite for this. I think they're in for a rude awakening. But a lot of the rhetoric that you see, it's very important to remind people that Twitter is not real life. It's just not. And I don't know where y'all live. I live in Alabama, so it's obviously very different. But like, as much as they say that the Alabama hospitals are overrun and we're all just dying in the streets here, like, no, we're not. And nobody wears a mask, and everybody, like, it doesn't really exist here. I mean, people do get sick, don't get me wrong, but it's not, I don't know. I think that I think they're in for a rude awakening from the, like, with pushback from the states and from just citizens in general. Like, he talks about being tired of us.
Right.
We're tired of him. So.
I hope you're right. I definitely was encouraged by, so I'm from South Carolina originally. I live in Texas now. But I saw, I don't know very much about the South Carolina governor, but I saw Henry McMaster. He had, I think, one of the most dramatic, and I appreciate it in times like, because it's a dramatic time. He said, the American dream has turned into a nightmare under President Biden and the radical Democrats. They have declared war against capitalism, thumbed their noses at the Constitution, and empowered our enemies abroad. Rest assured, we will fight them to the gates of hell to protect the liberty and livelihood of every South Carolinian. Yes!
That's awesome. Yeah,
like,
totally.
I don't know much about him. And as soon as I shared that, I had people telling me, beware of the rhinos in South Carolina, or people that I guess they're saying that say things they don't mean. But I have no idea if it's all bluster or not, but I really hope it's not.
I think there's probably some there's some unprincipled politicians who will seize on this though and recognize that even if they don't really mean it, they might actually act in the way that we want, because they'll realize like, oh, this is what people want. So like the Texas governor has done that a little bit.
He's sort of. What were you going to say, Elle?
Oh, I don't even know. Nothing important. Well,
what can states do? Did you guys like? I was thinking about this. What could a state do? I guess you could potentially say to the businesses in your state, you're not required to follow this, and we won't enforce it. I guess you could say that you won't let federal agencies enforce it. Like, I guess you could fight the agencies. So this is the Department of Labor. So how does the Department of Labor enforce this exactly? I'm not sure, but I guess you could tell your local sheriffs that arrest the Department of Labor people who come to shut you down. I don't know.
Hey, Q. So I definitely think that one of the key things here, and granted, I'm not a legal expert. I'm just kind of going on what I've read and kind of what I know, and I could be totally getting this wrong. But an executive order is not a law. And as far as the OSHA law goes, I don't believe that it's been codified into law. So, and I need to double check that. I don't believe it's been codified into law. Whereas in the state of Alabama, for example, the vaccine passport, vaccine mandate, all that, those bans have been codified into law by not only, it wasn't just an executive order from our governor, it was codified into law by our House of Representatives and our Senate here in the state. So I would think that codified law within the state would be able to hold some weight in courts. I don't know. I might be just making stuff up. So there's that. But, and then also, I mean, flat out, it's not going to last in court, but we know, or at least I don't think it will, but we also know that Biden also extended the CDC moratorium, even though he's like, I don't know if it's legal, but we're going to do it to buy some time. I feel like this is probably another one of those instances where he wants to make a big, bold move, and they'll just see how it plays out in court, because those things take a month or two at least. So
yeah, it reminds me of something that large corporations do. I've actually been on the receiving end of this lawsuit tactic before as a small company, but like a large corporation will know that they're in the wrong in some legal matter. It doesn't matter what it is. In the case that I'm talking about, they literally stole our stuff and were using it. They knew they were wrong. Like they knew they were going to lose, but they also knew we had limited resources and time. Like we were at the time, I think we were 5 or 6 people in our company. And so, and they were a multi-billion-dollar international firm. And so they just played these games in court where it was like, well, we're going to do this. I know it'll get shot down, but then like, well, we'll try the next thing. And then, oops, Your Honor, we had to change lawyers. Sorry. Like, can we delay this a little bit? And they tried to drag it out, knowing that even though in the end they would lose legally, they could get the practical value of winning for a really long time, which is all that really mattered, right? I think that's the strategy that the Biden team is using, and frankly, I don't want to it's probably lots of presidents have done this. The strategy is, we know that this might be struck down. We don't care, because once we get everyone, if everyone does this, if they comply and they get vaccinated, we'll get our way, and then it'll get struck down a year later, and who cares? We got what we wanted out of it.
There is a really good thread on Twitter, which I archived because I really liked it. It's by @wherever, where he goes into talking about the difference between legitimate authority and practical power, and talking about how, sorry, he's an officer in the Army, and he said that he could tell someone who's ranked below him, go sit in the corner and suck your thumb for an hour. I've just attempted to exercise my control over him. You'll be relieved to know that I don't have the legitimate authority to do this, but there's an outside chance that I could get him to do it. If he does, the nature of our relationship both has and has not changed in two terribly important ways. I'm talking about the difference between, if people go along with it, even if you don't have the authority to do it, then you basically got in your way anyway. So, I mean, I just basically reiterated what you said, but that thread was really, really good. It's from @wherever on Twitter. Highly recommend you go read it. It's a good read.
There's definitely PSYOP happening, right? There's definitely there's an attempt to psychologically control the population. And that's evident in the language you two were just talking about before, where we have this characterization of people who haven't taken the COVID vaccine as Homer Simpsons, or like dumb, ignorant. Beer and donuts are enough bribe to get them to do it. Like, I think one of the reasons that they chose those kind of bribes to put out is that the kind of bribe you choose is indicative of the characterization you're trying to portray for the people. So if they said, well, we're going to give them new money clips, it's like, oh, well, that's clearly you're going after a different audience. Or like, oh, like, we're gonna, like, here's a specialized here's a specialized dashboard ornament for Ferraris that we're going to hand out to people. It's like, oh, I see who you're going after. You think that people who have Ferraris are the ones who aren't vaccinated. But if it's like, here's some cheap beer and donuts, it's like, oh, I see what you think about the people who are not getting vaccinated. And I think that allows there's a lot of confused people in the middle who are semi-intelligent, who are not sure what to think about they're not sure what to think about all this. They're not sure what to think about the infringements on liberty. They kind of see that there's a problem, but you should be kind of getting vaccinated because it's for the greater good. And then people maybe make arguments about why they don't want to, and it's a little bit confusing. And it's a lot easier if you can convince those people, oh, don't worry, it's the stupid slack-jawed deplorables who are not getting vaccinated. Everyone with a brain is getting vaccinated. Don't worry about that. You can dismiss them. And I think it makes it a lot easier to make that divide you're talking about and doing us versus them.
Well, I mean, Obama had his birthday and it was a sophisticated vaccinated affair.
Right.
Absolutely. They're trying to delineate the thing. Here in Alabama, when they were trying to, Kay Ivey has been absolutely about, choose it whether or not you want it, but outlawed or made it illegal to require the vaccine mandates. But one of the things that they were doing here to try to convince people to get vaccinated, which I find it hilarious, was if you got a vaccine, you could go drive the loop at Talladega. Like, go drive like a NASCAR track. I was like, I mean, like, that's kind of cool, but but like, come on.
The thing about all those bribes that I thought, and they're clearly, it's funny how, they're so open now about the carrot and the stick. Like, they'll just say it. We don't even have to call it that. They call it that. They say, enough of the carrot. It's not working. Now the stick.
Time for
like,
stick.
Yeah. But when they were offering the carrot, one of the funniest things I saw, my husband and I saw, were people in the comments on Twitter who had gotten vaccinated immediately when it was first available, getting upset and tweeting stuff like, why are these people getting rewarded with trips around driving the Talladega car? Why are they getting to win lotteries? And why are they getting free beer and donuts? We lined up. We did the right thing early. We lined up and got the vaccine early. And my husband and I were laughing. He said, those people are sort of like the girl who puts out real easy. And then it's like, why are you going after like, why is this girl getting wined and dined and roses? Like, I gave it to you on the first date.
That's a great analogy, Carrie.
But they were just like, oh, because those people were really butthurt, But
just to be clear, I want Biden to hear this. I'm holding out for a free trip to space on the first SpaceX flight. So if you can arrange that, jab me all you want, buddy.
You're an expensive date.
That's my price. Yeah, I may be a prostitute, but I'm very clear about my price. Like it's a free ride to space and back.
Well, I'm looking at it more here on this though. So I didn't quite make this distinction. So Biden said, obviously they were saying that OSHA would require it, but truly there is no rule in effect yet. OSHA is developing a rule that would require that, but it's not in effect. And you have again some bloated, pompous, whatever, the former head of OSHA on Twitter says that even though there's not a law in place, compliance generally starts to happen when the rule is announced, even before it goes into effect. So again, this is another one of those things where is it like practical authority or is it actual authority? And there's actually doesn't seem like there's anything even codified or written into place yet, but people are already kind of
right, because they're worried it will be, and they kind of that people are very we live in a world in which people are very eager for an authority figure to tell them what to do, give them rules, whatever, and so
they call us bootlickers.
Yeah, and they call us bootlickers. Right. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. I think there is a distinction to be made generally, and I brought this up the other day when I was flying back from somewhere, and who pointed it out? I think it was Jason in Q, actually, who you just said hello to, who just super chatted you. He said, the airline was saying it's federal law to wear your mask, and he was like, it's not federal law. It's federal regulation.
None of these things are codified into law.
No.
Yeah, and that's a distinction that I think is lost on a lot of people. Congress passes laws, but in many cases, for a lot of stuff that's a little bit nuanced, we have accepted, and I think wrongly, this idea that Congress can pass very vague powers and hand them over to the executive branch and say, well, we want workplace safety to kind of be regulated, sort it out. And they give very weak guidelines, nothing super clear. Granted, it's a complex thing, and maybe you don't want Congress doing that, but that's part of the progressive movement, by the way, which is this idea that technocrats know how to do everything. And so it's building this technocracy where you've got, OSHA knows how to make workplace safety, but now it's all under once you've done that, it's all under one branch of government. And now a senile man can get up in front of everyone and say they should do blah, blah, blah. And he does have the power to change that regulation.
And it's completely unelected people enforcing this and issuing these guidelines, like the CDC and the eviction moratorium. It's unheard of. I think by the way, James Lindsay says he might jump in and join us in a second. Just FYI. Cool. So I don't control the background here. So whoever does,
my Twitter account literally just got suspended just now.
Are you kidding?
Really? Yeah.
What'd you do now? What'd you do?
Wow.
That's so funny.
You existed.
Crushing it.
Wow. Everybody
maybe Twitter's watching our show and they're like, oh, that's her account.
No, it happens.
No. Everybody we know is getting permabanned, and it's happening more and more frequently. And
I got this guy. It's fine.
That's great.
Are you the burner phone's biggest customer?
Well, so for anyone who goes through a lot of Twitter accounts, like I do, if you just you can get a track phone for like $15, and then anytime you need to start a new account, you can activate it for like $5 for the month. I mean, it does cost $5, but you can change the phone number as many times as you want to in that time, and you can make as many accounts as you want to, which is what I do. So there we go. Probably because I've been talking a lot of shit today, so I guess I deserved it.
It's all good.
Wow.
I imagine there will probably be a big purge on Twitter over the next couple of days.
Oh, yeah. I think this is so. One of the things that's really concerning for me about this is just sort of what comes next. But before I talk about what comes next, just a little something about the people that are going through this. The reason we're currently suspended from our main channel is because we did a roundtable last week with 5 members of the public who just came on. 4 of them felt the need to protect their identity, so they came on anonymously and didn't show their face. but just giving real life stories of people who are being affected by vaccine mandates in the workplace. And 3 of them worked in healthcare and or pharmaceuticals. Like these are smart people, or in the science. And the video got pulled and we got a 2-week suspension just for talking about it. And now there's going to be so many more people in that position. And so that's the immediate thing that's happening. That's, I find, really troublesome, and people's lack of empathy about that online. I know Twitter's not the real world, but man, do they push a lot. There's a lot of cultural leaders there, shepherds, if you will, shepherding us all to the wrong place. And what is it about people and human psychology that causes them to be unable to empathize with someone? Like one person in our roundtable, her husband has a blood platelet disorder, so he can't take it. Hi, James.
Hey, James.
Hey, thanks for joining us.
I'm sweaty.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah, I think it's good.
That's good, because we just talked to Jack Murphy recently, and he said saving civilization is going to start in the squat rack. And I thought that was
wasn't
good.
doing squats, but I had similar thoughts. I literally was outside doing wind sprints and martial arts training in between, and thinking things like, if the apocalypse comes, you've got to be able to push through discomfort. You have to be able to I actually was thinking, train yourself to the point of being weak and then start training. So that you can accelerate into the strength building or resilience building or I don't know, stoicism or some shit. Oh God, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Luckily, it's not that hot, but I am a sweaty mess, and I can't really stop that for another hour or two.
It's okay. I think being a sweaty mess makes your arguments all invalid, so this should be easy.
Well, they're invalid anyway. Twitter said so. So no.
So do you know Elle? Do you know Elle? She goes by some bitch I know. Okay, so she just got on the banned.
I just got suspended again.
Again? So you're on your 84th account next?
This is probably number 15, to be honest.
That's crazy.
Damn.
It happens in real time here.
You got to make cancel culture work for you, though, because every time I get suspended on Twitter, I get an immediate influx of followers on Gab and on Telegram, which is a lot more resilient. So I would like to thank Jack Dorsey for not giving up, because they're really just driving traffic to my site and my other socials.
What did you get banned for this time? I mean, you probably already covered it, but I
probably because I called Liana Wynn a fucking tyrant or something.
Oh yeah, I keep calling her a tyrant, but you got to avoid certain words. You can't use the C word with any woman on Twitter, or you're gone. For example, I can use whatever
word I want to.
No, I'm just saying, if you want to stay on Twitter,
they have.
I fully agree with your sentiment. I'm just saying that they have some guy called forgot Dave Rubin by the C word earlier, so I reported him just because I know that they're hypersensitive to that word. And bye. If for some reason they flip out, and Dave's gay, so here we go, bye. They really don't like that word. I mean, it's massive discrimination against Australians and British people who use that word in every third breath, but here we are.
Yeah.
But no, I'm really going after her. She's a problem.
Can we talk about her, and then we'll get back to what we were discussing before you got in? I saw the video for on CNN saying that Biden's 6-point plan, we did already talk about that, James, a little bit, but that the plan didn't go far enough.
Yeah, she's just outlining what the other 5 points are. That's what she's doing.
Yeah.
Well, how do we get them onto boxcars is the question that I'm a little bit confused about. And where exactly, what color will the boxcars be?
I've been talking to people that are in on family members and things who are all about this vaccine stuff. How do you get them on the boxcars is very easy. You just say, go on the boxcars, and they'll go. It's amazing. It's really this is what I've run into.
Trust the science of the boxcar.
Yeah, exactly. Did you know that if we just get on the boxcars, the pandemic will end? And that will do it. That will actually do it. I actually had people that I went to lunch with. I put this on Twitter a couple of weeks ago. I went to lunch with a bunch of Blue Anon type people, and they literally were saying to me, knowing that I had not been vaccinated and may still not be vaccinated and will not be vaccinated, period, that all unvaccinated people belong in camps. And like literally they were saying this to me, you know, and I was the only one there. And of course they were wearing N95 masks outside. We had to eat outside on the patio. It was like literally almost 100 degrees out. We had to eat outside on the patio, and they're wearing N95 masks between bites and sips. To like,
how do you know
saying
these
that we
people?
all, how do I know these people? They may or may not be in my family.
Oh,
yeah. So it's really, it's like totally lit when your family members are telling you belong in a concentration camp.
Wow.
And so that's how you get them on boxcars. You say the pandemic ends when all the unclean people get on boxcars, and they will push you on the boxcar, even if they are your mother. It's not my mother, by the way, though. My mom hates this shit. My mom's based.
That's good.
Good for your mom. Yeah.
So one of the things I was saying is, I think I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting a lot of messages from people sharing their stories. And so I was telling Elle, the reason we're banned currently from our regular channels, because we had a roundtable last week where we had members of the public just come anonymously. 4 of them were too afraid to even put their face on the camera, and just anonymously share details of how the mandates in the workplace. And so we had someone, and most of these people work in science or in the medical field or the pharmaceutical field. And one of them, her husband, he's the sole breadwinner. They have 6 kids. He has a blood platelet disorder that prevents him from taking the vaccine. His doctors advised him not to take it. And it doesn't matter. It seems like it doesn't matter what the reason is. Not that you need a medical reason, but even with the medical reason, they don't care. And so my inbox is full of people who I can't even read all these messages because it makes me so emotional, but I don't understand what is with the psychology of people that they don't feel, they can't feel empathy for people who are being put in this situation right now. Like, what is going on with people on a large scale that they can't feel empathy for the guy with the blood platelet disorder who has 6 kids to feed? Like, I'm sorry, maybe that's an unanswerable question.
It's not unanswerable. It's actually really simple. It's very, very simple. They have been led to fear the virus above all else in the world, and that fear trumps all other concerns. So this is how all totalitarian enterprises take over, is they create a sense of fear in people that is so overwhelming, whether it's the unclean this or that that's going to cause the destruction of society or whatever. They create a fear that narrows empathy to such a degree that they're willing to completely dehumanize people that are in the scapegoated group. That's how. They literally cannot process, because they're so afraid of the other thing. They're so afraid of the other thing. And there's lots of complicated psychology, I said it's very simple, behind that. I don't know if you've studied the backfire effect, for example, but the backfire effect was originally studied, interestingly enough, in the context of anti-vaccination. And what they discovered was that back when the old anti-vax movement was a thing, where it was like people didn't want to give their kids MMR vaccines or tetanus vaccines or whatever, they would go and they would provide them with all the science and all the information about, childhood illnesses and herd immunity, et cetera, would actually cause them to double down. And they would become more anti-vax as a result of being intervened upon by what would probably have been mostly legitimate medical science at the time. And what the thing is when you force somebody to go, what they figured out with the backfire effect is that when you force somebody to admit that they've been causing harm by holding wrong beliefs, that they've been on the side of evil, that they've been causing, widespread injury or malice or something like this, that they're so invested in protecting their identity as a good person that they will dig in deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper to do anything but admit that they've been complicit in evil. And this is the way that the backfire effect works. Facts become, not only are they impervious to facts, but facts actually become radicalizers in the same direction that they've already gone, because they have to admit that they've been complicit in evil to admit that they were wrong. And they won't do it. It's so hard for people to, we say eat crow pie or whatever, but this is way beyond that. When you're literally to the point where you're dehumanizing members of your family, imagine what it takes psychologically to admit that you've been tricked by CNN into dehumanizing members of your family. Like freaking Brian Stelter tricked that fucking potato tricked you into dehumanizing your family. Imagine how embarrassing that is to have to admit. Imagine how humiliating it is to you to have to admit that. So much easier to just say, oh, all these stupid, unclean people that I'm constantly hearing demonization about are actually the problem. And if they would have got on board earlier, if they would have just did what they were supposed to instead of being selfish jerks, then we wouldn't be in this mess. And I wouldn't have had to believe this way. And I wouldn't have had to take this radical position that's actually awful. And so their own guilt becomes a radicalizer in the same direction. It's funny because I kind of want to do a podcast about the overwhelmingly interesting points of Harry Potter for today's world that we're in. And if you look at how a Horcrux is unmade in the Harry Potter universe and that mythology, that allegory, a Horcrux is unmade by feeling all of the guilt associated with its production. That's the magic of unmaking a Horcrux and stitching your soul back together in Harry Potter. You have to feel the remorse, the full remorse of all of the evil that you perpetrated in order to create it. And that's a really profound metaphor. And the whole point at the very end of Harry Potter. Spoiler alert, kids, if you haven't read all 7 books, Harry, after Dumbledore does the same thing repeatedly, Harry offers Voldemort the chance to feel the freaking remorse, and he won't take it. He can't do it. And that's what happens. This is why at Christmas, on Christmas Day last year, I published an essay, Psychopathy and the Origins of Totalitarianism. And I said that totalitarianism always comes out of psychopathy, mentioning Leanna Wen. And that what happens is they spin ideologies that make people behave. Most people aren't psychopaths. It's like 0.6 or 0.8% of the population. But you get them caught up in an ideology, especially a scapegoating ideology and a grievance-based ideology, and they act functionally psychopathic. They have that narrowed empathy. And it's largely because the psychology is largely because it's so damn painful to admit you were wrong and that you got duped by something that bad.
Yeah.
That's it. Is this related to? Well, I can see that being taken to further. Even like I can see the horrifying outcome there, where if you're so afraid of confronting the role that you've played in, for example, demonizing your child or whatever it is that the potato has convinced you to do, you eventually actually want to not see those people around. You want them not around because they're a constant reminder of your own complicity and guilt. And so you actually putting you in a camp is good. It's a kind of not good, but it's a
from their perspective,
from their perspective it's good because they don't have to see you because you're a reminder of that.
It's right.
that evil that they've perpetrated.
You are an emblem of the mental pathogen that reminds them of the physical pathogen that they're trying to exterminate from their lives. And so locking you away where they can't see you, and they can even probably go into some kind of like Munchausen's by proxy pity story about it if they want to as well. And it's all kinds of messed up psychology when we get to the place that we are actually headed blatantly at this point. Some of us have been warning about this for a few years and getting our accounts canceled repeatedly, and thrown off of social media and called insane and getting canceled out of our networks and everything else. And it's getting increasingly blatant now. This is where I keep hearing, I'm not getting these messages like you're getting. I've finally stopped receiving messages of people kind of like desperate for their personal life story to tell me. I used to get about 1,000 a week, and I get almost 0 now. I guess people realize like I can't help you on a personal level. I'm a theoretician, sorry. So I get messages now though of people saying things like, the Democrats have lost me forever. Like there's no bringing me back. I've never deviated from them in my life. But there's no bringing me back now. And this is why I keep saying I've tweeted it a bunch of times. We have crossed the Rubicon, or they know they have crossed the Rubicon. They cannot go back. They are not going to, the Democrats are not going to win an election outside of a couple of states, the stupid West Coast states and New York, basically, in Vermont. Outside of those states, they're not going to win significantly in national or state elections again for a generation, and they know it. They therefore are not going to play by the rules of normal electoral politics. 2022 is going to be, if it's a fair election, is going to be a massacre for Team Blue. 2024 is going to be a bigger massacre for Team Blue, and they know it. So they're not going to play by the rules of electoral politics. They're going to try to break the game between now and then if they can.
Yeah, I don't
more
believe
than they have actually.
That we'll ever see. That's just me. I don't know if we'll ever see a fair election again.
I'm way more optimistic. I don't think that this regime will last, and then we will begin to see them again. But how we get out of this regime, I don't see pretty ways out yet. The Khmer Rouge, you never know. The Khmer Rouge was literally, they murdered 3 million Cambodians, and then they just kind of, all the people went up and just asked them to stop and to get out of power, and if they did, that they'd be left alone. And they did. Pol Pot died of an old age, not in prison.
No.
They just stop it, get out of power, go back to being a regular citizen. You're not in power anymore. And they were like, okay. I think like three or four people, and that was it, out of the Khmer Rouge got tried, where all of them were like, war criminals to the degree of virtually the Nazis. And so you never know. There are ways, but people are going to have to basically demand that the powers that be no longer be the powers that be, and then then we see what happens. Because they are not going to play by the rules any longer. I mean, they haven't been for like a while, and people just haven't been ready to admit it. But the pretense that they are going to play by the rules and that their usual rules are still operant, that pretense is done now.
How much do you think we're in a bubble, though, and how much
which bubble?
Well, I mean, in the sense of, are people, as like the four of us are
outraged, that kind of bubble. Because another bubble is the fact that the entire world financial market is probably going to collapse because we're in a gigantic financial bubble. And one way of interpreting everything that's happening right now is that the rich people are trying to cook all the books to make sure that they're still rich after the whole thing falls apart. That's just one way to interpret everything. Like this student loan thing is just like the tip of an iceberg of financial catastrophe coming.
The problem with the financial catastrophe stuff is, because I've paid attention to that narrative for over 20 years as well, it's very hard to predict exactly what year things will fall apart. Like they will, like even the housing crisis, like there were predictions of it, and a couple people got the time frame about right, but few people got the time frame about right when a lot of people knew eventually what would happen. And it's hard, it's sometimes difficult because sometimes the financial markets can be manipulated long enough that, a 5-year delta is actually a big deal. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Now, as far as us being in like a bubble, like feedback loop bubble or an echo chamber, well, I don't know. I was just in ye old Southern California, which turns out to be fairly blue. I had to be tested daily for COVID while I was there, and then still wear an N95 mask everywhere I went. Wait,
where was this in Southern? I'm in California. I'm not down in
Los Angeles. That was actually
who was requiring the testing every week?
Paramount Pictures.
Oh.
I went on the TV, and they tested me literally the day before. They tested me again the day of, and they made me wear an N95 mask everywhere I went while on premises.
It's religious.
It is.
It's so.
I asked literally every person I could ask who appeared to work there why I had to wear a mask if they've tested me twice in the last 24 hours and I have 2 negative tests, which statistically speaking with their tests means I probably don't have it. Plus I may or may not, we'll just leave it at that, have antibodies. And so nobody could answer that question. They just said it was the policy. And just following orders, sir. Hop on the boxcar.
Just following orders, yep.
Just following orders. And so, and it's like nobody you actually interact with is responsible for the policy. So you can't hassle like the poor guy driving the golf cart. It's not his fault.
Yeah, you can.
Well, I did, but I hassled everybody. But it's like that's the thing is like if you hassle them, they're like everybody complains to me to their boss, and then their boss is like all my people are complaining to me to their boss, and it finally makes its way up to the people responsible. But as we have identified, those people don't care. So anyway, I was there, and all I heard were little whispers. I'm a Democrat, and I agree with every word you say. I'm a Southern California Democrat and I agree with every word you say. But the problem is, and I ran into this in DC also just before that, the problem is, but we still can't vote for Republicans. We've got to find, which is like half of them are screwed up anyway. We need to find a Democrat who will be against this stuff. And it's like, well, here's your odds. You got about 5% chance of finding any Democrat who will buck the Democratic Party system. And then they won't do that for long once they get in the machine. You got about a 40 to 50% chance of finding a Republican who will.
See, here's what's happening with those people, because I used to live in LA and I was in that echo chamber and I was in that cult, and their identity, I know you know that their identity is tied up with their political party, which is ridiculous.
I know.
It is. And so I think the first step for those people is helping them understand that you can be liberal and vote for a different party. You can't have them sever their identity as a liberal yet. They may choose to later. Some of them may become conservative, some may not. I still consider myself liberal on most political issues, but to ask them to abandon all of their, it's sort of like, I think we have to find a way to ease them into, you're still liberal. Like, you haven't changed. The world's changing around you.
No, that's right.
And
left you.
Yeah. And this whole Republican, we can't vote for a Republican. Why? Nobody even knows what they're doing in the voting booth, but they still feel like they can't do it. Why? Because it feels like they're betraying something. I had 2 progressive friends vote for Trump this time, and I voted for Trump this time, which would have been unfathomable, 4 years ago. But one of those friends called my husband and was like, I feel like did I do something wrong? I think it was right, but I feel dirty. Like it's because they have so much identity attachment to these political categories, which themselves are changing and don't even mean that much.
Right.
So
yeah, that's a huge point. It's a huge thing. And this is what I've noticed is, they're just utterly attached to that identity. Like, the Republicans are the dumb people and they're the bad people, and they want to like limit women. That's why I'm all pissed off about this stupid abortion thing right now. It's like, yeah, I get it. It's a huge moral issue for people, and it's also the biggest wedge issue in the universe. Like, could you seriously
not get distracted?
Like, do you think it was an accident that this came up right before a bunch of wavering people in California had to try to vote out their communist governor? Like, played every time.
These techniques that you're talking about that have been used against the people that are not complying with vaccination mandates or don't want to get vaxxed, they've been used against the Republican Party. I mean, I've been in California for 20 years. There's been constant rhetoric of actually fearing Republicans, that Republicans are literally the KKK. They're literally fascist Nazi people. And obviously that rhetoric increased in the last several years, right? They're the devil. So
my hood is just like right off the screen, actually. I got like the whole robe and everything.
Sure. My baby sacrifices are over here. They're just off the camera. But I mean, so they've come to. It's like now they're between a rock and a hard place. They maybe fear the COVID stuff, but they stop fearing that, and they've got this other rock over here where it's like, well, I fear the Republicans too. I don't know what to do. I can't get out of it because I'm afraid of the Republicans. In a similar kind of irrational way.
Yeah. I don't know what I know what tripped me over is I got asked to, like, I just happened to be in DC when CPAC was happening, and somebody was like, let's go just for the afternoon. And I was like, I can't go to CPAC. And I went, and I'm like, holy shit, I've just been lied to about conservatives my whole life. And it's like, I live in East Tennessee, and it was like, but it's one thing because it's like, oh, my conservative libertarian buddies, they're one thing, and then, but they're my buddies and I know them. And then it's like, but that's the political entity. And you go there and it's just a bunch of people that are normal having a good time. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. These are actually normal people. And then I started to realize actually that there's Republicans and then there's Republicans. In other words, there's Republicans and then there's Rockefeller Republicans, and the Rockefeller Republicans are the same fucking problem. Mm-hmm. Bill Kristol's the same problem. Yeah. Bill Kristol's on their team. And that's why I said you got about a 40 or 50% chance with a Republican. And then I realized that the Republicans who are not the country club Republicans are normal people. And I like all these normal, and it's like, oh, the problem are the elite people.
Yes.
Oh, it's a have party.
They have both parts. I mean, it's like we've talked about before. It's a uniparty, and it's just sort of, are you wearing blue or red? But we're all in the same party for the most part. There are outliers and people that I don't think are one of them.
Are deplorables because they're outside of that. And so, I mean, I watched like the same people who told me I belong like in a camp in my family recently, just a couple of months ago, were saying, wow, that DeSantis makes a lot of sense, but I could never vote for him because he's a Republican. I was like, you can't vote for him because you're a Tennessean, actually. But but he was talking about a national election.
That doesn't stop Democrats, James.
True story. But no, that was he was like, if he ran for president, you know, I have to say that I agree with almost everything he says, but I couldn't vote for him because he's Republican. And then when I got told about the concentration camps, I was like, well, what do you think about Ron DeSantis now? And they were like, Death Santis. That's literally what the guy said back to me. Death Santis. He's killing all those people in Florida. And I was like, which people? Like, really? Have you been to Florida? You should go to Florida. I couldn't go to Florida. People are dying there like crazy. And it's like okay, it's Blue Anon, man. It's like, I'm utterly convinced that Blue Anon is the realest force in politics. I'm utterly convinced that network news is the problem. Everybody's like, the internet was a mistake. And like, no, it was not. It has exposed the problem and people are freaking out. But network television news is that is like the biggest vehicle for propaganda that you could possibly imagine. The internet actually decentralizes it and makes it so, you can pick your own propaganda on the one hand, and you can get caught up in an echo chamber really easily. But holy crap, it's so easy to get exposed to a contradictory opinion. I have read Political Punerology twice. And yes, you should read the book. It's a fascinating book.
You get to pick your echo chamber on the internet, is what you're saying. Whereas
you get to pick your echo chamber. But the thing is, you also like. So somebody said something on Twitter earlier today, and it was Connor Friedersdorf or something, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was basically along the lines of something like this. It was as being mocked ever made you change your opinion? Well, not in the moment, but here's what I do: I get mocked. Turns out, I know you guys don't know this. Once in a while, I'm wrong. Did you know that?
What?
Nobody knew that. Once in a while. It's like a 0.000000014% chance, but sometimes I'm incorrect. But sometimes I get mocked, and usually if I get mocked, I actually go double check my sources. And once in a while, I find out, and it's much more often than what I just said, holy shit, I'm embarrassingly wrong. And then I very quietly change my opinion. So it doesn't like change in the moment, but being mocked actually like, no, I'm not dumb. I'm going to show them, and I go look it up, and I'm actually wrong. And I think more people do that than you think, or than a lot of people.
It's actually, it's funny because
I've realized that. Yeah.
My husband, when we met, he was he wasn't an SJW, but he was he just trusted the mainstream news outlets that you're talking about. And he said, he was like, you never made me feel like you were trying to give me a lecture. It was just that you would say things like, and I don't remember this, but to him it was big. He said, we were cooking one day and I said something about Trump's collusion with the Russians, and you just said, wow, you believe that? And and he said it made me embarrassed. Like, should I not believe it? And later I started reading about it, and I was like, oh my God, this never happened.
I mean, the other thing is though, is it's like, are you serious? This stuff is so funny. How could you not make fun of it? Look at Klaus Schwab, for example. The guy, like, are you kidding? Just listen to him. He's like Alex Jones was making fun of him the other day, and it's the funniest damn thing I've ever seen. Because first he actually said it. He's like, you will be eating bugs and weeds. You will be drinking this water from the sewage. He's like literally saying this stuff in his creepy, well, he was saying, I guess, in German, but in his creepy German accent, looking like Dr. Evil had like a really bad decade, and like wearing some kind of like fucking laser suit. Like, he's the weirdest guy. How are we all not making fun of this guy relentlessly and constantly, so that CEO at Goldman Sachs and his sharp little Armani feels like a total putz for ever listening to that jackass? Yeah. How are we not constantly making fun of the guy who looks like Dr. Evil but got his face stretched and it hangs a little bit like a poodle or something, or one of the other dogs that has hanging faces. Like, why are we not constantly making fun of this guy? Like, this guy should.
Well, he doesn't have a white cat yet, so he needs to be petting a white cat.
Just Photoshop it on there. Like, who cares? Put cat turd on there. Like, seriously, how on earth they hate being made fun of.
Yeah. This is why they hate memes. This is why they hate memes, because the right is pretty good at memes. Sorry,
you do. Yeah, you, me, like 20 other people.
You have to make fun of these people because they have no sense of humor. And honestly, if you had to write out a supervillain for the modern era and you wrote out Klaus Schwab, you would go, that's a little on the nose. I need to give him a little bit more nuance because he's very much like a cliche. And
he's saying his plans in front of James Bond. That no one would do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The New World Order. That's my best accent. But no, they say it all the time. If you get into Antonio Guterres, who's the Secretary General of the United Nations, he's like a radical from Spain or Portugal, one of the two. All these people are just absolute lunatics who are in these unelected positions of global power, and they absolutely read like cartoonish supervillains, but they're real and they're trying to rule us all. So that's great.
They're successfully ruling us all in many ways.
Yes. Well, they're unelected. I mean, there's no way to control who gets into those positions of power. They just are there.
Yeah.
I guess whoever's the best sycophant gets.
Well, that's why laughing at them is so important, because if they start decreeing things and you make fun of people who listen to their decrees, a lot of those people, some of them still have shame. Not many. The most profound thing I've heard this year, by the way, is don't always try to appeal to somebody's better nature because they might not have one. And I was just laid out on the floor for a week contemplating that. I was like, oh crap, I've been wrong my whole life. They might not, but some of these people do. And other people realize, even if they don't have a better nature, they realize that if enough people are making fun of it, that it's not going to make them profit. It's going to set them up for liability. It's going to make them look like clown shoes. And so it's just why we're not making, every company that's associated with the WEF that got hooked into this should be embarrassed. It's the most humiliating. You got sucked in by a Bond villain, an obvious Bond. Are you kidding me? How clownish are you? Yeah, I get that he's probably got family ties to one of those famous families you're not allowed to mention, but it's his mom or something. But you're not supposed to say that. But it's
the Colonel Sanders, that family. I'm
kidding. No, it's a different family.
He probably does do the Bilderberg meetings, I'm sure, right? He's in that level of.
But it's seriously, they're most of the top 1,000 companies in the world are tied into this. Go to their website, look at their partners. Just go to the WEF website and look up partners. You can even use Google, which will still return this result for you, and go look at their partners. And it's most of the top 1,000 companies. Why are we not making fun of this stuff into the ground? Seriously, because if we don't burn it down with humor, sooner or later somebody's just going to burn it down, and then we're in a different world altogether. Yeah, right. It's that's what we're trying to avoid.
I'm going to do it, but I understand if someone else did.
Yeah, well, I mean, at some point there's not going to be an option.
This is why it's so interesting what's happened this week, because what I tweeted earlier, ear to the ground, listening to different people in different camps. People they crossed a line that people knew, they see the line got crossed. There's all these lines that I've been saying, where's your woke breaking point or whatever for over a year almost a year and a half. And they finally crossed a line that average normal people are what, wait, what? Mm-hmm. And then everybody says, pointing out the hypocrisy is pointless because the hypocrisy is the point and the repressive tolerance, and that's correct. But normies don't realize we live in repressive tolerance yet. And correct. So when they see, the CDC director, they see Biden, they see these people as recently as July, which I know it feels like it was 17 years ago, but it was actually just 6 weeks ago, saying we're not going to do this. And now they're doing it. And you got Jen Psaki or whatever her face is sitting there grinning like a little girl, excited wage tyranny on people. Like, we're finally going to get you, little bastards. And she can't contain her mirth. Like, I know that works because a ton of normal people are sending me that video of Saki and saying, is she actually a psychopath? I didn't see it before.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, they've crossed a line, and I don't even know where we are right now. Like, there's been different periods, like all through January, I was half useless in the whole like culture war because I couldn't figure out where we were because stuff was going to change so fast with the new administration coming in, and I didn't know what was going to be. The only thing I knew for sure was they're going to get rid of that. They're like basically everything Trump did that was of any use would get it taken away in the first day. True, and past that, I didn't know what was going to happen, and I thought what's going on now was going to happen by April. So my timing, my guesses were all wrong. See, I told you sometimes I'm wrong. I was embarrassed by that because I actually put it out to some very smart people who then held me to account in April. Like, haha, see, everything's still normal-ish. And I'm like, okay. And now I actually had one of them send me a message and say, okay, it's a little later than I thought, but
yeah.
It's only been
I think that people are going through a grieving period, and your point about how normies are not, they don't realize that all the rules have changed is a very important one, because we do often talk to people who are already awake in some ways and forget. And I always try to remind myself, there are normies who stumble across our show all the time. I have friends now, someone in my hometown who started off hate watching our show, like hating us, and then have woken up. And so there are people watching, and it is new for them, and it is new to realize that yes, there are psychopaths who become elected to office. That's actually probably a good career path for psychopaths. Like they like, we know about the ones who murder, right? Like but not most psychopaths don't murder. Most of them get elected, or they become some type
of murder for them.
Yes, they get people to follow their orders, and
that's why people should read political ponerology. If you were a good psychopath that really wanted to kill millions of people instead of just one or two and a serial killer until you get caught, you would get in a position of power where you can then affect terrible policy that's going to cause lots of pain and suffering that you go home and gloat about, and like Voldemort, collect trophies that you turn into Horcruxes.
Yeah, and experience glee over or get off on and all that stuff. And that what you saw in her face, I absolutely agree. It was something akin to duping delight. She was delighted to share that this is what they're doing.
Let me ask you guys a question. Do you think?
But the thing about normies is that just. I forget. I'll come back to in a second. You go ahead. It was.
So I get why people can't see the psychopathy in somebody like Jen Psaki or whatever. I don't understand how you can't see it in Leanna Wen. It's like, how on earth are people's psychopath detectors so broken? Like all her mannerisms are like weird. It's like the next generation Japanese robot rolled out, and it's like still got some glitches. It's like it's clear that something
her inflection is very weird.
There's like an uncanny valley between
she's super weird, and like again the weird like inappropriate smiling about this totalitarian nonsense she's saying. That's the absolute glee of applying power. But your question, Carter.
Well, my question is, do you think that, because I've been thinking about this, I think that they get off on doing it out in the open. So if you look at the Great Reset stuff in the World Economic Forum, for example, it's not a conspiracy theory. There's a website and a book, and it's not a conspiracy theory because it's out in the open. There's no secrecy.
An open conspiracy.
Right. And I think maybe when you look at Psaki or you look at some of these people, I get the sense that there's a part of them, if you're talking about that, when you said that the psychopath goes home and gloats about it, right? I think there's a part of them that wants to publicly announce what they're doing. If you see it, and they get home and they're like, I told them I was going to do it, and I did it. Like, I got away with not even lying. I got away with showing my colors and still doing it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense.
It's a thing. It's a thing. It's totally a thing.
Because
they're so clever. They're smarter than everybody else.
Right.
Like they will insert themselves in crime scenes and investigations because they want to be close to. I just reread Edgar Allan Poe's The Black Cat, And he writes psychopathy very well. And that story, if you haven't read it in a while, I mean, he gets away with the murder of his wife, and he talks about how he enjoyed it and he didn't feel really bad about it the next day. Although he tries to all of his stories, he starts off, I'm not insane, guys. But then this happened and I had to kill my wife. And then he gets away with it. The detectives come to his house. He even takes them down in the basement where he entombed her. And then he says they were leaving. He was getting away with it. And he just got so gleeful, he couldn't stop himself. He's like, isn't it the architecture down here great? And starts tapping on the wall where she's buried. I'm laughing because it's so absurd, but that's what they're doing. They enjoy it. They like it being out in the open. And of course, he gets caught in that story because he can't resist bragging about it.
Yeah. And what else do they have?
Yeah, it's like, I'm doing this to you. I know that I'm doing it, and I'm getting away with it out in the open. And if you talk about it with like the World Economic Forum stuff, if you talk about it, I find this to be kind of fascinating because they've put it all out there. It almost backfires in a way, even though it's the fact that it's all out in the open makes people think, well, it can't be happening. Yeah, there's a website about the Great Reset, so obviously it's not nefarious.
Yeah, they would be hiding if it was bad. Is that your?
Yeah. That's the idea. I mean, there is actually a book called The Open Conspiracy that explains exactly this.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, it's from like the 40s or something. It basically tells the whole story of where we are.
You guys are giving me a little bit of hope, actually, which might sound weird, but let me explain.
It's at the bottom of Pandora's box is hope.
Yeah, thanks. So last year, I already kind of accepted. I have a much more, I'll say, fatalistic view of the United States in its current form, not a fatalistic view of parts of the U.S. and humanity and like our ability to kind of carry on in some form, to have some liberty. But I already had that a little bit of pessimism. But I always thought, okay, maybe there's a bunch of people who will resist authority, and if they tried to do something authoritarian, people would stand up and resist. And the compliance with the mask mandates and the lockdowns really changed my view of mainstream America. And I was like, oh, you know what? They're just going to get on the boxcar. Like they're going to be told to get on the boxcar, and they're going to get on the boxcar. If what you're saying is there's a lot of people reacting to this particular thing in a defiant way, that actually gives me more hope than I had previously for, maybe they're willing to do the mask thing, they're willing to close their business, but this is a step too far. Is your argument that it seems like there's more people now who are pushing back than there were in mid-2020?
I think there are way more people. I think it actually, in the very beginning, when we knew very little about COVID, it actually seemed slightly reasonable. Okay, I just have to wear this mask. It might help. I don't know. Like, it's not that big of a imposition on me. And then it was like, let's all like 15 days to okay, let's just like be careful. And I get it. But now it's like we're a year and a half into this, and it's like it's clearly not working, and they're just being weirdos. And so way more people. It's like the red pill only goes in one direction here. And it's just a matter of whether or not people are willing to stand up and speak up. The other thing that I've run into, to give you some more white pills, is the number of people last summer where I would get these messages and they're like, I can't speak up because I don't want to lose my job. And now the majority of the messages I get are like, come hell or high water, I'm resisting this. If I lose my job, it wasn't worth having. And it's like, no shit. That's what I told you last summer. Like, if you don't, like, your job isn't going to be your job anymore. It's going to be this like horrific thing you don't want to participate in real fast. Like, if you don't, it's a Jordan Peterson's thing, there's consequences to standing up and there's consequences to doing nothing. They both have consequences, he's got that whole thing that he does, and he's right though.
Can you do the rest of the show in that voice though? Because
I actually kind of could.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Sometimes I practice. Yeah. That's how I actually got to being able to do a relatively okay Jordan Peterson impression, was by going through the Kermit the Frog Rainbows song. In mimicking the Kermit voice while he sings, and somehow it clicked.
I think those people that are waking up, I suspect that you're right, that there are more people seeing this now. And I think a lot of those people are grieving because
they need to, yeah.
It's a kind of a death of you have an idea of what you thought the world was. Or
this is what my wife said actually a couple
Yeah.
of weeks ago. She said she's grieving that she thought the world in her life was going to go a particular way, and now she
Yes.
realizes we have to play on hard mode for a little while.
Yes.
And it's going to be different. And so she had like her vision of the future, and now she has to have a different vision of the future.
Yes. It's a bit like I would say for anybody, because people have reached out to me, and our community who are, look, I was crying yesterday and this morning. Carter can tell you. It's like weirdly, my body just needed to release all this stuff, and you'll go through that, and you're going to go, like when someone dies, you go through all those cycles of grief, they call it.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to get through those to acceptance. Why? What do axes do?
Well, see, maybe it's something to do with a gender fact, but rather than crying, I grab my axes and go outside and swing them like 1,000 times. Every time I start to feel that way. It's real therapeutic to picture swinging an axe into people. You know what I picture?
I agree with you.
Knitting.
I agree with you.
We have a lot of knitters in the. You could also do crochet.
Yeah, you can see. This is like all those black bicycle helmets and skateboard helmets, and I'm just like, that's not going to stop this fucking axe. Yeah. Swing it again. 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 I'm having a good time, and man, I'm getting in shape. My abs show again. What's up?
Exercise is actually very cathartic. I'll say that. And I agree with what Jack Murphy was saying about that. But yeah, so people are going through these stages, and I just think it's fine. You're going to go through them. You'll cycle back through some of them more than others. If you really are having this awakening for the first time. I'm going through it, and I already knew the world wasn't what I used to. I've already been through this, but I'm still feeling like I'm grieving something, because this line was a different kind of line that they crossed. But we have to get to that acceptance stage, because we have to get to that rebirth place. And so get through your grief and then get to acceptance.
It's weird. Are all of you feeling that? Because Carrie and I were having a different experience. Because I'm not I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I went through, acceptance happened a while ago. Like, this was an inevitable result. I knew damn well we were going to do this. I won't even be surprised when the boxcars come out. Like, I'll be joyed I'll be like over the moon if the boxcars don't come out.
My acceptance happened probably over the winter. Like, my full acceptance, once the election went the way the election went, I was like, okay. And what's crazy is I actually had a guy I sat down with in October who predicted down to which states were going to be upside down and weird, exactly what was going to happen in the election. He was like, you just watch. And he started just rattling off states. Every one of them will stop counting the votes in the middle of the night. All this is weird stuff is going to come up around it. Told me this in October. Actually, it might have been the last weekend of September, well before the election. And I was like, putting a lot out there, man. That's a lot on the table. And I'm watching the election thing November 6th or 4th or whatever it was. And I'm 4th, I guess. I'm watching that night, and I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. Okay, now I know what paradigm we're in. And who on earth could predict that? Like, really? Exactly which states there was going to be weird stuff go on? I think he missed one. Otherwise knew exactly which ones they would be. It's not hard. They're crucial swing states. He put Ohio in there instead of Arizona or something like that.
Yeah.
What about you, Al? Are you always, I don't know as much about your background. Did you have some kind of awakening to the way the world is really versus what you thought it was, or?
Yeah, I definitely did. So I grew up in Alabama. I've lived here for most of my life. I've also lived in like Illinois and California for a little bit, in Florida for a bit. And I went to Auburn, which is an SEC school. And I went into college in 2008. And even though like I was raised by a fairly conservative family, but nothing crazy, just like your average conservative Alabama family. I went to college and got like super indoctrinated and went like, just full tilt SJW. I have all these archive posts of mine from Facebook where I'm talking about fascism and feminism and like celebrating AOC and like Pramila Jayapal getting elected. And Oh, no, I know, it was bad. And I would like to think that as a human being that I'm intelligent and capable of seeing things for what they are and seeing through the, bullshit. But for really about 8 years of my life, I didn't at all. And I did have my kind of aha red pill moment, so to speak, which was just kind of the beginning of it because it's a process, but was Puerto Rico. And I have an old Facebook post of mine from 2017 in September where I posted on Facebook, our game show host president is talking about football players because Trump was tweeting about Colin Kaepernick. And of course, I wanted to defend Colin Kaepernick. Our game show host president is tweeting about football players while Puerto Rico lies in tatters. And, I had all my friends were liking it, making all these like snarky comments underneath. And then later on, someone managed to get in front of my face that they found all of those runways and warehouses full of supplies that they had either mismanaged and didn't get to people or had willfully withheld from people. Still kind of never really got full disclosure on that. But and that was enough for me to kind of go, well, maybe Orange Man isn't that bad.
Uh-oh.
And all of my friends on Facebook were like, no, Trump's literally Hitler, so like it doesn't matter. And that in itself it certainly wasn't like I went overnight to like,
right,
maybe I'm not a leftist, I don't know, but it was enough for I started to go and try to find out what exactly was said or what exactly was written rather than hearing from a person
believing
who reported what a person said. Honestly, at the time, John Oliver was one of like my main sources of news. So there was that. I was just woefully ill-informed and I was very defensive over it because I didn't actually know what the hell I was talking about. And that was a tough pill to swallow. I used to make fun of my family members because I voted for Hillary. I cried when Trump won, the whole thing. And I was like posting all these things on Facebook about how people who had college degrees voted for Hillary and people who didn't voted for Trump. And I was that person. So yeah, I definitely have had an awakening. And as far as my actual background, I'll try to wrap it up because I don't want to sit here and just talk about myself. But the whole social media thing, the site, everything has kind of happened on a happy accident. Last March 9th, I used to be a data analyst, financial data analyst for a government contractor. And I was putting together COVID data because at the time there was no dashboard. You couldn't just go onto some site and see like where we're at. And it took me a very long time to compile it. And I had like 200 followers on Twitter. I was like, well, I might as well just post it just in case any of the people that do follow me want to see it. And so I put together this thread that went insanely viral, like 20,000 retweets and like wild. And it's just like me in my house in Alabama going like, what the hell just happened? Because I gained a small platform overnight. Donald Trump Jr. followed me and like all this random stuff. And again, it's just like me in my house. And that was even at the start of COVID, I feel like I thought I knew about the world, but it just kind of kept unraveling. And when a family member died a couple weekends ago, I mean, it is what it is. But we're all at the funeral and my family's asking me, what have you been up to lately? And I feel like on the one hand, I don't have a lot to say to them. I'm like, well, not much change, but like fundamentally on like a psychological and mental level and emotional level, like everything has changed. But like, I don't know, I just went to the grocery store and wrote an article. Like other than that, like I feel so different, but there's not a lot to like report other than, trying to get into like a deep conversation with family members I don't want to do that with. So I don't know. It's been a process, but I don't know. I think it's different for everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a similar story, and I think James knows it too. So I see that for me though is evidence that there are people who will, despite what you said earlier, James, about and I completely agree, the people who you said dig in deeper because they can't eat that crow pie or whatever. There are people who do it. I was in social justice for 20 years. Coming out of it was like a death, also like a death, because it's a death, the way you look at the world and also your idea of yourself. Yeah. And who you are and your identity and that. And to realize that you've been a participant in something that you now view to be evil. And so people do come out of it. I guess maybe it's dependent upon, I don't know, I don't know. I don't know what it's dependent upon.
Well, I mean, the worse things get, I think the more impetus people have to come. My guess is like,
or do they double down, like James was saying? The worse.
No, well, I think they double down with information, but with suffering, they might question things. Like you hit a rock bottom personally, right? So
yeah,
like I said a few minutes ago, the red pill goes one direction. More and more people are red pilling than blue pilling or whatever at this point. I see it everywhere. These people who are telling me that they're lifelong Democrats and then they whisper, but I believe every word you say. Like those people, it's coming. And so what the thing is like the people who are there are people who, I don't know, you get shaken loose. You have to have a thing that shakes you loose. Like I was talking to a guy recently and he just totally doesn't connect that there's like this huge component to this that's going on very willfully, and you never know what's going to make it connect. And all of a sudden, you know, I said something, he's like, well, that sounds kind of conspiratorial. And then the conversation went on. I was like, it doesn't require conspiracy, it's just crony capitalism can actually explain that. We don't even have to get into conspiracy, but even if there is a conspiracy or whatever, and then blah blah blah, the next thing you know, we're like 15 minutes down the conversation, just randomly going in different directions like we tend to do. And he was like, you know what's really weird? And I was like, no, he was at first was like, why are they just letting these cities get destroyed? These cities, why are they letting them get destroyed? And he lives in a blue city. And he was like, why are they just letting them get destroyed? And I was like, because they're going to hollow out the housing markets, and then they're going to drive people out of the cities. And BlackRock's going to come in and buy all the properties. And then when they're going to clean it up in a few years, and when you move back, there won't be any houses to buy for under $5 million. And you're just going to have to rent, and you will own nothing, and you'll be happy. And he was like, shit, you know what happened? Like 2 days ago, I was like, what? He said, this guy called me and he offered to buy my house just out of the blue. I was like, really? And I was like, just by any chance, did he offer you 20% more than it's worth? He was like, the guy's exact words were 20% more than what was worth in March 2020. I was like, how about that? And he's like, holy shit, there is a conspiracy. And it's like all of us, it's like, you never know. There's something that's going to connect with somebody that connects it to their real life. And all of a sudden they'll break loose. This is still the case. But if you don't hit that right thing, they're going to double down and double down and double down. And for me, like the biggest thing that I just keep saying to people, because it's true for me, and I bet you every single one of us except for Carter, who has just been expecting boxcars since he came out of the womb.
No. I did have an awakening. It was just 20-something years ago. I did have.
Every one of us will relate to this idea. I think I lost my train of thought completely with my awesome joke. No, it happens every time I make an awesome joke. It'll come back in a few minutes. But
you were saying that everybody has one thing. If you can connect it to them personally, it's not always the same thing for each person.
Oh, no, I was saying what I say to everybody all the time, which is that your cognitive dissonance goes down dramatically when you stop trying to make sense of the world.
Yes.
In the paradigm that's being fed to you by the narrative. Like once you're just like, maybe the narrative's false. Like the reduction in cognitive dissonance is insane. This is when we used to do the atheist activism. It was like a big thing to just go around and ask people to, like, you remember there was that pastor, and he's a total SJW, like lunatic in California, Ryan Bell or something like that. And it was like, just why don't you just live like you're an atheist for a few months and see just live like there's no God and see if you come back to stay, if you keep your faith, or if it just dissolves out from under you. And this was like a thing that was going on. And then this guy, Ryan Bell, does this blog for like a year where he's a year without God or something. And he turns into this atheist and the whole thing. He's a pastor. He doesn't know what to do. Super progressive pastor, by the way. He's a total, he's one of the so-called usual suspects now. Just total, I don't know where he is. I haven't heard from him in over a year, but it's the same thing though, right? It's like, what do you think? Just entertain for a few hours later today. Maybe the whole narrative's false. What does the world look like to you? And if somebody connects to that cognitive dissonance going down, that it's an easier explanation for the world, then I think the most powerful law in human behavior is what we might call the law of convenience. I think it's actually, as dumb as this sounds, I think there is a stronger law, which is the law of attraction. That's the name of a real neuroscientific law, by the way. It's not The Secret. The law of attraction is literally that organisms are attracted to that which is beneficial that seems beneficial to them, and they're repelled against that which seems harmful to them. It's the simplest law, but past that,
because life
the law
couldn't exist without such a evolutionary pressure. Yeah,
correct. And so the next probably most powerful law is the law of convenience, which is that which is more convenient will win. Which is why stuff like digital payment is going to win no matter what. And even though we don't want digital wallets and digital IDs and everything else, it's just too damn convenient. I don't know if you've ever been to a country that forces you to pay by scanning your phone, but you're like, wow, that was easy.
Yeah.
And once you have
China, by the way, they've been doing that for a while. It's great.
That would be the one that I've been to. And so who knows what they scan your freaking eyes and take all your fingerprints to enter the country. So who knows what they know about people.
Yet they're not forcing the vaccine.
Everything.
Well, there are all kinds of. Well, they've already got a social credit system. They don't need to force the vaccine.
Yeah.
Ding.
Yeah.
I see.
The vaccine is the gateway drug.
The vaccine is virtually irrelevant.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Except it's gonna kill a bunch of people in 5 years, probably. Whoops. Said that out loud.
Oh, don't say that. We'll get banned from this channel.
What you're saying for anybody,
James, whatever James said is not approved by the WHO. That's our disclaimer.
No, I don't actually know if that's true or not. That was a joke, sort of.
It was a joke.
It's easy.
Sort of.
I'm going to say something, though. As the guy who from the womb has been, as you've said, worried about the boxcars. I think it's a good time, and this is my fear, actually,
that's why
with
you
a lot of
played
people.
with train sets as a child.
Right. This is my fear, though, about a lot of people waking up late. And I think fundamentally, and James, you know this because you've studied a lot of really bad philosophy. I mean, really bad.
Just wait till my next 2 podcast episodes.
Okay. I think one of the problems, and I think pragmatism has actually the prevalence of pragmatic thinking has enabled this in some way. One of the problems is that we have been trained to think that ideas don't matter as much. And that principles are kind of this idealistic thing. And of course, bad principles do result in horrible stuff when you try to implement them. But we have this bias against ideas as mattering. And, you know, the reason that I didn't predict exactly this, but a lot of people that aren't just me have been saying, this is the direction the country's moving. This is how it will go. This is where we're headed. These principles lead to these results, and a lot of the responses are, well, you're being overblown, like you're overblowing this, like it's just one compromise of this principle. It's just a little bit of not freedom. We're just giving them a little bit of power for this case. We just need 9/11 happened. We just need the Patriot Act to go get the bad guys. Like all that stuff, like those principles and ideas matter. They just don't matter immediately. They matter in the long run. And what I'm afraid of is people waking up and saying, we need to go back to the 90s. And it's like, no, the principle, the foundations for where we are were laid actually before the 90s. As you know, they were laid a long time ago. We need to really identify, and I think this is something you've been trying to do. What are the principles that make Western civilization valuable and work and moral and superior? Like, what are those? What's the essence of those principles, and how do we flesh them out and support them and really have decent arguments against the principles that threaten them?
Well,
and that sounds like a boring conversation.
No, it's an exciting one. I've been thinking about that a lot, actually, and it's going to be the last chapter, or a lot of the last chapter of the new book I'm almost done with. And we'll talk about it. I'm not going to I'm not going to embargo my information. But I will point out that, you're worried about people waking up too late, but there's a problem with waking up too early too, which is that people basically just think you're insane. Or
that's been true for Alex. I mean, look at a lot of people have said, yeah, absolutely.
So
you're just
insane. A lot of people. It's very easy to trot out Alex Jones, who's racking up an awful lot of W's this year. But Thomas Sowell is my favorite example. Thomas Sowell saw through this stuff very, very clearly 30 plus years ago. He's very articulate. Turns out he's black, which in the current social currency world means something.
But not politically.
He was the 30-something years ago equivalent of an SJW before he woke up. He was a Marxist. And, what changed your mind? He has that very famous interview, and he goes, well, facts, and he's very simple enough. And so he cut through all of this 30 years ago, and people just ignored it. So there's a big problem with waking up too early too, which is that nobody listens to you. And by the time you're vindicated, you're proven right, you're just old hat. So timing is everything. Now, what are these values? I think that you can actually answer that. It's a very trendy buzzword that attaches to what's going on, but people don't realize, I don't think, that the depth to which it attaches. What makes America work is decentralization. It always has been. Division of powers is decentralization. Governance with the consent of the governed is decentralization, the decentralization of political power in both cases. The separation of church and state is decentralization. So all of a sudden it's the separation of ideology and state. They just found a loophole to let ideology back into the state. So you've decentralized ideology, you've decentralized political power. Capitalism decentralizes property. The king doesn't own everything, or the Lord doesn't own everything, and you work in his service. You own your own stuff. And if you want to take your stuff and turn it into a pile of money by liquidating it, and then try to take that pile of money and turn that into a bigger pile of money by using your capital in that sense, that's called capitalism, baby, and you are more than welcome to. And if you fail, well, that was on you too. And so the decentralization of property is central to what's going on with capitalism. Science is the decentralization of authority on truth. And so
I take it to the mathematical limit, and I'm totally on board with you.
Yeah, so we're just going to go all the way to atomized points. No, but the point is,
individualism is the limit.
Individualism,
is the
ultimately, yes. With that's right. So colorblind equality, which was something promised in 1776, and people were arguing for it a little earlier than that, and came to fruition in, we'll say, 1964, legally speaking. That's a decentralization as well. You no longer are able to centralize power and identity categories the way that you could before, at least not legally and institutionally, and not to get away with it for very long if you try. To the point now where they've actually flipped that over and made it to where they've gone plaid or whatever, they've gone all the way through, so that they've changed disparate impact into a new basis for identity politics, for coming back into the groupishness. And so, what's made America work all along is decentralization. So the Bitcoiners are all, doing their little thing right now. They're very excited because that's decentralization of currency, which is something that has been very difficult to do without the technology that we are currently developing. And there's going to be this huge arms race between centralization and decentralization around things like crypto. And can AI beat, the emergent function of human beings in that market? That's going to be one of the huge questions. And so the centralized powers are all trying to develop AI to whip everybody and to have full AI-based control like the Matrix. And they think this is definitely coming, et cetera. Whereas the decentralized people, I think, have the argument right. Not making an argument one way or the other for Bitcoin or for any particular cryptocurrency or cryptocurrency in general. But the concept is correct, is that when you decentralize power, you enable what I'm referring to as a common sensibility. People get put on equal playing fields by decentralization. Centralization creates a pedestal that's separate from the common ground. And that's the magic sauce of America and Americanism, and always has been. And I think that this is this is control versus, or centralization and control versus decentralization and freedom, therefore becomes the axis of the new political fight. And it's a very interesting time. But I think that, what are those principles? Well, first, we're going to have decentralization. And then secondly, we've got to start answering the question of what do we do about the relationship between is and not, and which values are they that make this work, right? And so that becomes a secondary question. Of course, I wrote an essay about what values I think guide the post-woke world if we get through this. And I said truth, beauty,
Truth.
and I define beauty as excellence. So truth, beauty, liberty, and responsibility I defined as a single concept, really, and merit.
Yep.
So those are I mean, it was just a first step. If you want to add 12 more, that's fine. If you think that merit and excellence are the same thing and you want to consolidate them, that's okay too. I don't really care. I'm just throwing ideas out there and, seeing what happens. But truth and excellence and responsibility seem to be pretty key ones. They're basically like woke kryptonite. Anywhere is like if you had like a rock of truth and you went near SJW, they'd like melt. And if you came at them with accountability or actual like real accountability, like seriously though, imagine
I've
if
got
you
one
had
to add to your rock though. Truth, beauty, joy. Joy.
Joy. They hate
Joy's
joy.
a good one.
Yeah, I have a podcast I did that was "Be a Rebel, Enjoy Your Life." That's literally the title of it. But imagine like you had like the Wonder Woman like lasso of truth, but it was actually the lasso of accountability. And if it gets wrapped around your arm, you're actually accountable for the crap you did wrong. Like you would literally paralyze. These people are allergic to accountability like nobody I've ever seen in my entire life. They are the least possible. And so there's this guy I know that runs this company, and he got rid of all the woke people in his company with one policy, one simple change. Any little wokey that came in and was like, we need more whatever race, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, great, it's your job. And if you can't make it happen, you're fired. And they all quit. He made it their responsibility to accomplish the change they wanted to see in the world and told them they're fired if they can't do it. And they all quit before they could get fired.
I love that.
That's the only thing he did. He just said every single time one of these woke people came and complained, oh, we don't have enough, whatever identity category. There's not enough trans people working here. All right, well, you're right. The talent's out there. Go find it. And you've got 4 months. And if we don't have however many more, we're not compromising on quality. They've got to meet all of our standards. We're not making it easier to get in. And if you can't find them, you're fired. It's your responsibility. So enjoy your new job responsibility. If you succeed, we'll pay you a bonus and we'll give you a raise, etc., because you clearly brought in more diverse talent to the company. And they withered. Literally every single woke person quit his company.
See, he set a rule. The rule was they couldn't change the
you
quality
can't change level. That's right.
And that rule will kill them. It's have you ever talked to on Twitter? She goes by Grace, the culture warrior refugee. Mm-hmm. She did the same thing with her nonprofit. She just, for a year, all the Wokies just listened to their concerns, read all of their literature, but then set rules for how they were going to engage. And they actually had to support their arguments with evidence, which they couldn't do. So they all quit.
Good luck.
I love the accountability thing. That is the best thing I've ever heard, James. Because there's no I'm sure you're familiar with the skin in the game. Was it Taleb who wrote the skin in the game?
Yeah.
Right?
Taleb.
It's that concept of like, if you have no skin in the game, this is when you get the moral hazard. And
that's why I'm
now
afraid
we have
of
an elitist
self-driving
class
cars.
with no skin in the game.
Like I had this whole panic attack like 2 days ago. Like I woke up in the middle of the night like sweating over self-driving cars. It's the stupidest thing I've ever said in my entire life in public. I freaked the hell out. And you know why? You think,
I don't know, just do a Kermit impression, so it's okay, man.
Yeah, well, why are there so many songs about rainbows and what's on the other side? No, so it's like I wasn't worried about self-driving cars in the sense like, oh yeah, self-driving cars, they could just lock the doors and take you to the police station if you said the wrong thing on social media, which is totally true. Somebody could hack your car and drive you right off the edge. Wow, wouldn't that be convenient if the CIA knew how to hack your self-driving car for you? Nope, it wasn't those thoughts. It was, wow, if you're not in your car, if you have the money to buy it, all you have to do, you could just like get a freaking remote control and just ram it into stuff. You could fill it with explosives and ram it into stuff. Oh, wow. Decentralized truck bombs. The guy doesn't have to kill himself. What an amazing concept. Mm-hmm. That's bad. And I just like went into this whole thing like, we don't want those.
You could rig that up now.
Yeah. Well, you could.
You're bringing up something that Snowden talked about in his book, which is that the internet went from this massive decentralized, like a Cambrian explosion of decentralization, right? Mm-hmm. We had media, but also other companies and just how people communicated. It went to this beautifully open and decentralized thing, and it's actually it's gone backward, and the internet is actually much more centralized than we think about. And especially, post 9/11 and this stuff, just to be clear, right? Every text you send, every phone call you make, every website you've ever visited, everything, every time you touch your computer, anything you interact with online or on a phone network, that the content may not be recorded always, because that's a lot of content, but who it was, when it was, where you were, all the metadata, all of that is all recorded permanently by the NSA. And they what they did, because they wanted this centralization, was they just redefined a couple words. I think it was acquire and obtain. And they said, well, we're not allowed to acquire or obtain information. So the new definition is we've only acquired or obtained it once we query the database 10 years later to look for it, but we can collect it all now. And and like something like 80 to 90% of the tech that runs the web is controlled by American companies, or like designed by American companies, like when you're talking software and everything else. So the idea that the internet is still this decentralized thing is just false. They have re-centralized the internet to a pretty severe degree. And if I was going to have a nightmare, it wouldn't be about self-driving cars. It would be about that.
Are you saying, to go back to something you said earlier, James, are you saying you don't think that will happen with currency, that they're not going to win in centralizing?
Oh, I think that they're going to have a really good bid at winning. I think that placing your hope in, if I say this out loud, I'm going to get 10,000 angry people sending me hate mail. Like you think with all the stuff that I do, I get a lot of hate mail. I actually only get a little bit of hate mail. I got some really funny hate mail the other day. I should have read it out loud, but it was hilarious. But if I say what I'm about to say, I will get lots of hate mail. They can crush Bitcoin. They can crush Bitcoin. I'm not saying they will. I don't know if they'll succeed. They can, and it's not even hard. We'll use the other cryptos. No, you won't. They can crush crypto really easily. If they get a social credit score, your crypto's toast.
Well, look, I was a cryptographer for over a decade prior to the Bitcoin stuff, and I was paying attention to hash cash and precursors to Bitcoin. And when Bitcoin came out, a lot of people were like, "Oh, this is the ultimate thing. We'll be able to build an alternate financial system and blah blah blah." And the thing that you forget about, guys, is I think earlier Elle just said, or someone said, maybe it was I don't know. Someone said Twitter's not real life. Bitcoin's not real life either. Eventually, you have to purchase something. You have to buy a house, or you have to buy a car. Is what?
I mean, like, all of our currency isn't really real anymore.
But my point is, no matter what you do with cryptocurrency, you can't eat bits. You have to buy things with those bits. Like, you have to use them. And in the real world, there is a centralized group of people with guns who have power.
That's right.
They can ultimately do whatever they want when you move from one domain to another, even if they can't shut down the servers, which they also probably could because they control so much of the infrastructure. But even if you had your own satellite network supported crypto thing and it was perfectly evasive and they couldn't shoot missiles at it or find it, when you went to use it, men with guns could be there.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I don't know that they can stop. So this is where the Bitcoiners get pissed at me. They're like, you can't stop the blockchain or whatever. And I'm like, they don't have to. They only have to destroy it as a repository of value. And that's what you're talking about. They can make it so costly to participate in that shadow economy that virtually no normal person will do it, at which point it becomes very not valuable. And
it's that convenience thing again.
Correct. If you make it difficult, I mean, it would be so easy to get everybody off of Bitcoin right now. If I were like Klaus Schwab, it would be so easy. It's like, if I can think of this, it can't be that bad. All you have to do to destroy Bitcoin as a repository of value. Are you listening, Klaus? I'm giving you your plans. We can have a food shortage of Bitcoin. It's very simple. You tell everybody that you're going to find them ridiculous amounts of real money, fiat money, real fiat money, if they hold or use Bitcoin whatsoever and they're found out doing so. But if they just sell all their Bitcoin to the central agency right now, they'll give you a 25% or a 10% bonus. You have $100 worth of Bitcoin, we'll give you $110 for it. And what you're going to get is 97% buyout immediately.
It's like gun buybacks. We'll buy your gun back.
He doesn't want to do that, because the flip side of Bitcoin is, although it's decentralized, the way the blockchain works is actually a really powerful weapon if the centralization is destroyed and controlled by a central authority, or the decentralization. So if a central authority can use it, which they can, it's got a perfectly, I mean, imagine being able to trace $1 all the way from when it was printed to when you destroyed it after 20 years of use. If I buy a stick of gum from you, they know, and then you turn around and what do you use that $1 for? You carry something, right? That's an amazing byproduct of the inherent design of most cryptocurrency. Some doesn't, but they don't. Klaus Schwab doesn't want to destroy Bitcoin. He wants to use it to control. That's why he's not doing what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they'll try to make their own, is what they're going to try to do.
Possibly, yeah.
They'll want to centralize
then maybe he'll
crypto.
destroy Bitcoin.
And then they'll try to destroy the others as repositories of value. And so that all the value lands in the Klaus coin or whatever. And that will have a little white cat on it.
Well, if you look at what China did, right? China actively supported a Bitcoin fork. And I think on the forked chain, I think they own over 50% of the servers. So like they effectively got control by forcing a fork and forcing their internal companies building the miners to use the forked Bitcoin. And I think I think that's the status of Bitcoin Cash right now. I'm not 100% sure. So
all I know is somebody bought me some Bitcoin. I never had any Bitcoin. Somebody bought me some Bitcoin, so I have a little bit of Bitcoin. And I think like the week after I got it, it like plummeted in value and has never properly recovered. And so it was my fault.
You contaminated it.
I told people, it's like, I know that right now, for example, that Newsom is going to win because I spoke up. It's just like how I voted for Trump, and then we have this fucking geriatric. He's not a potato. I don't know what he is.
He doesn't either.
Yeah, well, that's what somebody said. Do you think Biden knows? Blah blah blah. I don't think Biden knows what he had for breakfast. Like, come on. Actually, that was my wife's joke, and she was super happy that I used it on Twitter.
My joke about him is that I think a lot of politicians are puppets. He's not very different. It's just that he has a lot more puppet holes. So there's like more people controlling him.
That's such a gross concept. Every time you say puppet holes, like it's like I get the willies.
But
what is it, like trypophobia or whatever?
Yes, with the fear of the small holes. It's disgusting if you go look on those images.
Did you know that the researcher, the neuroscientist who discovered that particular phobia, actually has written a multitude of papers criticizing the crap out of our grievance studies papers? And
no.
Yeah.
Really?
Jeffrey Cole is his name, and I only know his name because he went after her. He wrote academic papers saying that fat bodybuilding is not intrinsically ridiculous. And he used his phobia of holes. He was like, people think this is ridiculous, but it's true. It is like evidence. And then he actually got so mad at us when we argued back against him that he went and did a survey. And he asked 400 college students if fat bodybuilding is ridiculous, or 400 people. Maybe they weren't just college students. If fat bodybuilding is inherently ridiculous, and more people said no than yes. And so he said, see, there's no basis by which you can determine something.
He went to
ridiculous.
Dairy Queen and proved you wrong.
Yep.
By interviewing random customers. I think here's what you should do. You should take your grievance studies papers and punch holes in them and send them to him.
Lots of little present. Small holes.
Yeah, lots of little holes. Yeah.
That's a great idea.
So I don't want to keep you guys too long. I want to kind of close out with where do you see things heading? And if you have any more white pills to drop, please drop them.
Malice has the best white pill. Every time you think we're going to lose, you just take a picture of like that Antifa teacher or that weird like sickly purple-haired person that was a teacher or whatever that was on the, what do you call it, the libs of TikTok or whatever. And then you say, being blackpilled means you believe these people can win. And this is a serious white pill. No, this thing is, though, I mean, this is where Helen is very, I think, a bit naive to how bad things can actually be. But she's always said that it's going to destroy itself in a puff of its own contradictions. I think that's the way she likes to phrase it. This thing isn't, and this new thing they're trying to build is not internally consistent or stable. If we look at the woke stuff, I mean, it eats its own legs. So it's not very collaborative in and of itself. So they're going to start jockeying for power and cutting each other off at the knees, etc. If we go to the Klaus Schwab stuff, like his whole goal is sustainability, but sustainability, this is, do you know how much management that takes? Like, it's just not even going to happen. So the question isn't, will it fall apart? The question is, how long is the tyranny before it falls apart, and how much falls with it? And the Soviet Union took down a lot and lasted a long time, so it could be bad. But even China is internally much more unstable than people realize that it is, because of its command economy. And so where is it heading in the short term, though? These idiots have crossed the Rubicon. They have only one option, which is to keep pushing, keep making it worse, keep drilling down into it, and keep freaking more and more people out. And then I don't know what happens. I brought up the Khmer Rouge. Maybe people just yell enough. Biden gets put into a resident facility and 25th Amendment, and then Kamala actually doesn't have any chops and gets scared and decides to step down before the torches and pitchforks come out. I don't know. Maybe the torches and pitchforks do come out and we go through something of a tribulation. I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm not playing, like Meghan McCain tweeted at me yesterday and was like, the midterms are coming. And I was like, nah, I'm not putting my hope there. P.S. I believe our institutions have failed, so let's not trust those. So, and then, although on the other side, the potential for a genuine renaissance right now is super high. Like, the artists are bucking. Once they get something put around them to start creating the art that's going to walk us out of this. Remember, the Enlightenment followed the Renaissance, right? It was art first, and then it was the Renaissance, and then you have idiot Rousseau decides, oh, we need to do more of this romantic bullcrap, and then French Revolution, and then Hegel, and then Marx, and then we're doing literally him again. And so it's like, whoops, this bad idea came up again. So, but a new Renaissance is totally possible, and thus an enlightenment that deals with the challenges of our time. I don't know if you've read Woke Inc. I don't know that Vivek knows everything in the world about all of this, but he has some very simple potential solutions to a lot of the big structural problems. And if we can regain space of political capital by one, hopefully legal means or another, there are actual workable solutions to many of the big structural problems that enable the problems that we're facing right now. There are also people, if you don't know, rebuilding the internet from the ground up. Long ago, Carter would probably know about this. I don't know the details. We had to choose between something like two different internet protocols or something like this. And we chose one. It turns out we chose the wrong one. And then there's a different one that if we would have chosen it, it's much harder to control, etc. And people are literally trying to rebuild the internet from the ground up. And that's where you might see the new kind of digital economy that awakens, that enables the Renaissance for artists to flourish, etc., to move the people to push in the direction of a positive rebirth, as Carrie phrased it earlier. So I told you, the thing at the bottom of Pandora's box is hope. Pandora's box is open. All kinds of crazy stuff is going on. Calamities are all around, and hope is the last object in the box. So like I told Joe Rogan, he's like, are you optimistic about this? And I was like, I don't have time to not be optimistic. The only thing, like, psychologically, it makes no sense to be anything but optimistic, because otherwise you're just losing. Remember, these people want to demoralize you and make you lose. So you don't get demoralized. You're like, no, we're going to win, obviously, because it's like, I was thinking that earlier too. It's like somebody told me a long time ago, there are two kinds of people: murder people and suicide people. And I was like, you can't be a suicide person, because every suicide of sane, normal people, because of the stress of this, is a win for the psychopaths who want you to do that. So what that leaves, I'll leave that to you to do the dichotomy there. But
the hard math there. Yep.
Yeah. But what it means for me though is like we're going to stay optimistic. We're going to stay focused. We're going to keep trying to find ways to push back. And if we can't push back, we're going to put sand in the gears. We're going to make this is a Solzhenitsyn thing from the Gulag Archipelago, and I can't find it again. I swear I read it. Maybe I made it up, but he talked about how if they would have just made this, what is it? Was it the Stasi? Who the hell was it in the SS? Who were they in Russia? The secret police.
The Stasi were the West.
The Germans.
East Germans.
East Germans. Yeah. Who was it in Russia?
Was it just the KGB?
Maybe that. Well,
Stukachi were the ones who were turning their friends and family in.
Well, anyway, he said whenever the officers showed up, if they would have had to pay a price every time they walked in a door, yeah, you're going to get shot, right?
Yeah.
But you're going to get dragged off to the gulag if you don't. So he's like, have your machete or your axe or whatever and take off their arms so that they know that every time they go out to round somebody up, they're going to lose somebody. Make them pay a price. Now, I'm not saying we should chop anybody's arms off because nobody's showing up at your house with a syringe yet. I'm saying instead that every time they try to make one of these political moves that they should have to pay a price for it. Every single time they make one of these political moves, they should have to pay a price for it. And then they start thinking twice about making more political moves.
Yeah. Yeah. El,
sue them.
What's your white pill message? Do you have a white pill message of hope at the bottom of Pandora's box for us?
I don't really believe in hope necessarily. I definitely do have a good I have a good feeling about how things are going to turn out. I know that a lot of the people who are kind of here at the being pushed to their limits are a lot more hardy and a lot more resilient than they want to give us credit for. And I will say that, yes, I did just get suspended on Twitter. I saw Disco in the chat. I got suspended on Twitter again, so stay tuned. I'll come up with another one. But if you want to find me in the meantime, I'm trying to come up with actionable things and ways to kind of move forward through this in ways that we're not dependent on the government. I'm not looking to some elected official to handle things. We're not going to vote our way out of this. The best way that we can do this is by saying we don't actually need you and you need us. And so if you would like to follow me, if you don't already, for right now, you can find me on Gab. It's gab.com/somebitchiknow, or Telegram. It's t.me/somebitchiknow, or you can go to somebitchtoldme.com and you can find all my links. But I believe in, independent and individual actions over, trusting our what am I trying to say? Our elected officials and our institutions, because they are fundamentally just destroyed from within, and they've been that way for a while. But everyone's kind of starting to see it now. But I actually do have a good feeling about it because, again, like I said, we're a lot more resilient than they want to give us credit for. So come
You're
find
right,
me
and
we'll figure it out together.
You're right in that we don't need them; they need us. And
absolutely.
That's something to remember.
We're playing chicken right now, and they want to see who blinks first. And
that's exactly right.
Like, I'd stare all day.
I would say to go out on a song, if we could play a song without being banned off of this channel.
We can't play without being banned.
We're not playing it, but go look up the lyrics to Hank Williams Jr., A Country Boy Can't Survive. It's the spirit we need right now. So. Yeah.
I think that's the one that was on literally down the street from my house. There's this kind of like shambly shack, and they had literally a Confederate flag with some guy's face on it. And I got close enough, and it was Hank Williams.
Hank Williams Jr. or Senior?
No, it was Senior. It was Senior. And I was like, oh my God. They had that thing flying outside of their house for like years. It's like they never took it down.
Tennessee, man.
Yep.
It's like for some people that not to take this in a whole nother direction, but it just means survivalism. It just means being a rebel. I know for others it does mean it's a racist symbol, but that's not what it means.
Those people weren't racist. I actually talked to them. I was like, who's that on your flag? I got talking to them, and they were like, that's exactly what their message was like. They can't tell us what to do. And I was like, okay, good to meet you.
Excellent. No, they can't, sir.
Brush your teeth.
It says, because you can't starve us out and you can't make us run. Anyway, look it up. Cool.
Don't sing
Thank you guys.
We'll get banned.
We'll get banned.
All right. Well,
thank you both for joining us today and giving us your time and your white pills and your positivity. It helped me.
Yeah, we're the most positive people on the internet. Elle and I are famous for our positivity.
Yes, you both are.
Say that.
All right. Well,
Positive to the right
Thank you.
people.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Go follow Elle and Conceptual James. We'll see you guys later. Have a good week. And what is it, Friday?
Oh, yeah.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Friday.
And we will see you on Monday.
Bye.
See yas.
Thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, we have a deep content library that includes interviews with everyone from Mike Cernovich to Megan Murphy, so go check it out. If you'd like to see more, please consider supporting the show by visiting unsafespace.com/donate. You can find us on all the major social media platforms. Well, mostly. And you can find a community of like-minded individuals on our Unsafe Space chat on Telegram. See you there.
Warning. This is an unsafe space. Dangerous ideas have been detected. The content of this production has not been authorized by the Cathedral. The following co-conspirators have been unpersoned and may be subject to federal entrapment. Research shows that wearing a mask significantly reduces the risk of becoming infected with independent thought. The next war will be nothing like Afghanistan. I promise. If you think about it, no one should be allowed to express opinions. But don't. Think about it, I mean. That's not your job. Thinking has been scientifically proven to be less efficient than compliance. Science, scientific, and scientifically are registered trademarks at the World Economic Forum. Unauthorized use is prohibited. Computer voice courtesy. Never mind, that last line is fake news. Please disregard it and return to your safe space immediately. There will be cake.